What's up, everybody? Bandit and Chad here with some more dirt on trucks. So if you aren't aware already, the Toyota FT-4X concept did debut yesterday in New York. Now, this is a concept, and we can't expect anything exactly like this to hit the market anytime soon. A lot of the ideas that were used in the concept are a little bit far-fetched, but you can definitely tell where they're going and what they kind of want to show off with this concept. So to our kind of untrained eye, just kind of at first glance, it does kind of look like a Jeep Renegade size and Jeep Renegade competitor. It does kind of have that kind of smaller size, but kind of a tough and rugged presence. But it still has kind of what they're calling the cute factor. Not the word I would have used to describe it, but it's definitely not the most aggressive SUV. Now, this definitely made a lot of people pretty upset because I think a lot of people were expecting kind of a replacement or competitor to what the FJ Cruiser would have been, and maybe for the Ford Bronco and that sort of thing. But the Bronco is still a couple years off, and there isn't really a direct competitor to the Jeep Renegade right now. So in terms of competition, I think Toyota definitely hit the nail on the head. Now, unfortunately, it is not a direct competitor to the FJ Cruiser, and it is a little bit smaller and not quite as capable than the previous one that went out of production a couple years ago. But that doesn't mean it's necessarily a bad thing. If you do kind of accept that this is not a replacement to that vehicle, I think it'll ease some people's feelings of it. When this first came out, I heard a lot of people saying, this is really a disgrace to the FJ lineup. It's not what we want and that sort of thing. But you got to realize, we as enthusiasts can't always get exactly what we want. I would love to be rolling around in a new interpretation of an FJ40 just like all of you all would. But that's not realistic. For a SUV to hit today's markets, it has to sell a lot of units. And it's not really possible for a boxy, solid front and rear axle vehicle to sell a lot of units other than the Jeep Wrangler. The Jeep Wrangler has such a huge following, and it'll probably never go out of business because it has such a following. But even more and more people that you can see now are starting to shift away from buying Jeep Wranglers, and because they're not comfortable. I had one in high school. It really was not a comfortable vehicle, both on the interstate and just in daily around town driving. It was not a comfortable vehicle. It was good off-road, but most of these people, millennials especially, and I guess you have to include Chad and I in that group, unfortunately, but millennials are not excited about going around the city, getting terrible fuel economy, having a really unlivable vehicle that's hard to park and hard to get around in, just to occasionally enjoy nature outdoors. And you got to think, most millennials don't exactly go four-wheeling to the same extent that Chad and I do either. So really, a vehicle that is that focused in one particular aspect, which would be off-roading, is not exactly what Toyota, I think, wants to sell at this point.
No, yeah, I definitely agree with you. And when we had posted that Instagram picture yesterday, we did get some mixed response on that. There might have been only one person that actually kind of agreed with us, and that, it is kind of a cool thing. In all honesty, it's growing on me, and I think it's growing on him too. Just all the things that they included in that small little concept. And that concept could show where Toyota wants to go in a few years down the line. But in all honesty, we might actually see some of those things implemented in whichever future vehicle they end up making out of this concept. I mean, for few years now, they've already included a cooler box in a Land Cruiser. That comes standard or as an option. So I mean, the direction that they're going is not necessarily too, I guess, out of a picture, out of the box.
Right. And you got to remember here too, with some of the more and more details coming out about this concept, it's not like Toyota just threw everything that they knew about off-road DNA straight out the window. It doesn't have a solid axle in the rear or the front. But that doesn't mean it's going to be awful. It still looks like it is going to have decent ground clearance. The concept at least demonstrates that it has, fairly aggressive off-road tires, and it does still have a mechanical transfer case that will have 4Low included, not just 4High. So it's not like just an all-wheel drive crossover or a redesigned version of the CRV or CHR or anything
Right.
like that. It's not just a straight soccer mom vehicle. I'm sure it'll be used as that, as we see a lot of Jeep Renegades being used at that, but it looks like it may actually still have some off-road credibility as well.
Right. It definitely does have that Toyota heritage, with the grille. Obviously, there's a four-wheel drive system, a dedicated one, not all-wheel drive, kind of like you said. It's got McPherson in the front, double wishbone in the back, all those different things that, are actually going to make it a pretty livable vehicle, just as most crossovers are. Like we said, this isn't going to be a solid axle, kind of like the trucks that we drive. This is going to be kind of an all-around vehicle, if you will.
Exactly. So Toyota has a lot of what they would consider hardcore vehicles. They do have the TRD Pro lineup, and if you're willing to spend the money, they are willing to sell you a new Toyota Land Cruiser. But Toyota, with this concept, wants to focus on a little bit something different, what they're calling casual core, which is kind of what we touched on earlier, where you could leave from work one afternoon and kind of go on spontaneous adventures. And this vehicle, with its interior set up the way it does have everything that you could need. Now, one of the more interesting ideas that was brought in this concept is a dual functioning tailgate. So they're claiming that if you're in the city and you're trying to load up your vehicle, it does have like a barn door effect where both sides would swing open like that, and it makes loading by the street a whole lot easier.
Right.
However, it also has a traditional hatch that would pick up from above, and they're saying that you could use that when you're out on the trails and say you get stuck in a rainstorm or something like that. But also, a lot of the interior is dual function as well. They do have a radio that pops out of the center console that you'd be able to use as a tailgating type stereo. They do have water bottles built into the door handles, and all of this other stuff. And they also have an interesting idea with the rear storage, isn't that right?
Yeah. So for the rear storage, as we had said before, Toyota has used cooler boxes in their Land Cruisers before, but this would be kind of both sides of the equation. It would be a cooler box on one side, but then a heater box on the other. So if you wanted to warm your gloves up, or you had some sort of meal that you wanted to kind of keep warm and go out to a sunset and watch it, and you have the warm meal right there with you and a cold drink on the other side or in the door handle, it's very cool, the functionality that they've put into this concept.
Right, and since they are going kind of targeting millennials with this concept, the gauge cluster is actually pretty interesting as well. So it doesn't have this big setup like I have here in my Tacoma, where it has big dials and your speed and everything like that. It actually just has a really, really basic layout. It looked like kind of an LCD screen, but also you could dock your cell phone in there, because I think Toyota is starting to realize that, while their navigation systems do seem to work just fine, a lot of navigation and head units do seem to get outdated really quickly. However, if you would just dock your phone in there, your phone is capable of navigation, it's capable of playing your music, it's capable of doing just about everything you need while you're in your vehicle. So if you would have that dock right there in front of you, then first off, that would allow for more frequent updates, but also it would probably kind of make people use it more often, because it doesn't make sense for you to be driving down the road and be fingering your phone and everything else instead of keeping your eyes on the road. However, if you would dock this in and it would kind of aid you in driving the car, I think that's a great idea.
I do too. So with this Toyota concept and its 4-cylinder motor and 4-wheel drive system, it does seem to target the Jeep Renegade. With that, it's going to be a few years before we see any kind of real market for this Toyota, and especially for it to come to life. But we're very interested in it.
Right,
sure.
and just because this is a concept, and just because it did come out here in New York yesterday, doesn't mean that they're absolutely going to make it. I think a lot of this is just to gauge interest and see if the market would respond to something like this. Now, I realize a lot of you all are really unhappy with it, but I think if you do make or kind of interrupt the connection between this as a direct replacement to the FJ Cruiser and just accept it as what it is and a completely new vehicle to Toyota's lineup, I really do think it makes a lot of sense, and I think they could potentially sell a lot of these. If you look around and you look at the different models of the Jeep Renegade, whether that's a Trailhawk or a Limited or whatever, they're really everywhere. We see them a lot here in rural southwestern Virginia where we are, and I'm sure that you all see a lot of them in your hometowns as well. So let us know what you think. Do you think this would sell well, and would you potentially buy one if Toyota did decide to bring it to market? Thank you all very much for watching. Have a fantastic week, everybody. We'll catch you next time.
See you guys.